Alrighty. So here is the last of our metagame wrap-ups for the year. Not for the year. For these series of events. We'll have more in 3 weeks now, which I will actually be at, by the way. Come say hi to me in Kansas. So here is the Gold Coast 2023 Materia Cup standings. The event was won by Soiree. Runner-up was Dragoons. As you can see, top decks, and once again, pretty consistent. This is the one event that had a lot of wind representation, which is very interesting. And by that, it had 2 decks that were very heavily wind focused. But let's go from the top. We have Soiree. And we have a really interesting Soiree list here. First of all, 3 full copies of Fusoya is really something you just don't see all that often. I'm also surprised to see the 2 copies of Titan as opposed to Hecatons. Going back to the old Aerith as well is really interesting. This looks a lot like a very early Soiree list. You would see like this Aerith and Cecil to try to make your Soirees all get really big. Only 1 copy of Zidane. No Cecil is really interesting. And we're on 1 copy of Sophie even. I think this card is criminally slept on, by the way. In Soiree, it's a little scary because you open yourself up to a pretty big Arcanist weakness the more 4-drops you put in. You can see we're on the Tidus, we're on the Sophie. Like our forward lineup, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 total forwards that aren't cost 4. But Sophie is, I think, really good if you think you're scared of Ice Earth. I think the ability to play Sophie, activate all your backups, and break a Toad or a Biblos is extremely good. The Fusoyas do give us you and out to Arcanist. Like you can go, if you Fusoya back on Arcanist, they'll Arcanist in response. They have to get it down next turn, which point it's summoning sick. And the Fusoya no longer actually does it, but I think it makes a lot of sense. I think one of the most powerful things you can do is go Warrior of Light, Fusoya in the same turn and just dare your opponent to answer you despite the fact that it's lost a forward and a backup. And you've drawn 2 cards, added back your Amaterasu. Like, it just becomes a really difficult board state to answer, right? Down to just 1 Irwin. I'm surprised to see the Pekiota as well. I've heard some people still swear by this card where, like, in the right situations, it'll just activate all your backups and get all your forwards up, and you're able to block and win the game from there. But he's just always felt so low impact to me, so happy to see some success with him here. Very simple suite of 9 summons. The full 3 Kusith, 2 Mist Dragon, 3 Amat, and the 1 Fenrir. Fenrir, I think, is a card that really needs some serious evaluation right now. This card is so good. One of the biggest things right now that you'll see, especially in any deck playing Warrior of Light, is one deck will get there first, and you can use Fenrir to be kind of a mirror breaker. You kind of pop whatever the backup you can to allow you to enable the Fenrir to do it. I like seeing a couple more targets than just the Aerith. I feel like the Fenrir is going to be missing a mode a lot of the time. Every deck is playing a 4-cost or higher backup, but only some are playing monsters. And only some are playing Light and Dark Forward's never been in a worse spot for the most part. But in general, if you have both modes in this card, it's pretty much always worth. And Aerith especially is kind of a weird target because when Aerith dies, she doesn't go to the break zone. So I'd like to see just like 1 more good Earth 2-drop in the deck. And then we have, for our backups, we have a really nice backup lineup actually. 3 Elvis, 3 Lexa, 3 Shinju, 3 Amber, all really standard. 2 Tyro, 1 Shantoto. The really interesting standout card here is Luca. We're really focusing on our power in this list. Luca gets us that. Luca's also really nice because she sneaks in under Fenrir. So if you have these 4 backups, you have Warrior of Light colors, and Fenrir doesn't actually break anything. You have to go for 3 CP Heka. I've heard a couple decks have been on this innovation, but interesting to see it actually show up. It definitely helps when you see... Actually, Sophie is not. She's category Mobius, isn't she? But yeah, making all your 8K or 9Ks or 8Ks into 9Ks is also really nice, getting you out of that all critical Hecaton range. I actually really like this innovation. This is really smart. Up next, we have Dragoons. Dragoons were second place with a pretty wild list, actually. I've kind of dabbled with like mono lightning Dragoons. I think like the new Kane backup is really nice. Ricard is so good. Alice is obviously really powerful, but this list went deeper on cards that are not Dragoons. I like Tidus. It's kind of cute. There's not that much recursion in Dragoons. And you draw through your deck really quickly. So even if you just mill Tidus off of Alice one turn, it's not that far off drawing him, really, which is kind of cool. I actually like that a lot. 2 copies of this Ramu. I guess we were scared of 13 as well. And then I think the only other non-Dragoon, we're on the forward Keen, which is interesting. I mean, he's a one-of. No Barbara at all, which I'm kind of surprised to see as well. I know Barbara kind of like falls out of a lot of lists, but I've always kind of personally liked her. I've always thought that giving all of your Dragoons haste was extremely powerful. The other thing that's really interesting, we're on 3 copies of Fail Thanos, the 60p backup. I'd be curious to talk with the pilot and see how this actually went. I've never liked this card. I could see it being okay in the current format, where it's like if your opponent extends a little too far, but like there's a lot of just kind of scary things about this when you're relying on this as your board wipe. And I mean, and Freya is so good already. Like, how many more ways of doing that? Like, it breaks. I guess it's a 60p answer to Vanille Hope, but like if they play Lightning, they're attacking with Lightning, right? So it doesn't actually stop that. I'd be curious to see what matchups this was intended for. Up next, we have Kyle Manning for Terra, Man in Black. This list is really cool, actually. And a lot of the things that... So, one of the things that would scare me about this list is you see we're on just the 13 forwards. 3 Terra, 3 Sephiroth, 3 Man in Black, 2 Seymour, 2 Sarah Mobius. This would scare me because of a low forward count, but because Terra is so efficient at taxing backup CP and preventing stuff like Arcanist, I actually think this deck is more than capable of just actually killing the opponent on a pretty low number of backups, especially when you start getting to this Shiva and you start looping this every turn with Man in Black. Your opponent never has blockers because Terra's dull freezing them out of the way. They never have backups to actually use their cards. Shiva says they don't have cards in hand. I definitely see how this list is potent. The big fear, and it's always been the fear with the Shiva, is the Shiva falls apart the moment you get Mistdragoned. As soon as you get 4 or 5, 6 Shivas in the break zone, your opponent sees what you're up to and they go Mistdragon, remove your break zone. I think a lot of the strategy falls apart, which probably is why this Shiva's in here, the 1 CP. Even just a 1 CP dull freeze, when that dull freeze also cascades into freezing a backup and then dulling another forward or freezing another forward. I think that gives this deck a chance. I do think it's funny how Lightning, like when Ice and Lightning have the 2 worst, like the worst summons in the game probably on average. And kind of combining them, you can sort of see how this actually works out. I think that the combination of Man in Black and Terra is really, really cool. I'd love to see this deck in action. The only other thing that is a little bit interesting to look at is I think the backup line. They did kind of I like to call it the scattershot approach, where you just kind of throw in like the backups you want and then a bunch of just random one of EX burst backups that kind of all do things you like. I think I would like to see them on Kalia Cheval, because like Kalia Cheval gets them Quan and it gets you Tono. You can get Quan and Tono, and then Reeve, Kate Sith, and you've got all of your backup fixing off of like those cards. And you can run a really slim backup engine, but you really want your backups down because you want to be casting summons for essentially free every turn. So I get the scattershot approach to backups. I just think it can be done a little bit smoother than it was here. And it's so important for a deck like this to get backups established early. That's kind of what I would like to see. Really, really cool list, though. So here's the weird list of the event. It's this weird retainer, like earth, wind, and fire, but also there's an Une in here. Like it's clearly meant to be a Warrior of Light list, and we're on like Soiree backups to enable it. Because obviously Amber gets you Lexa or Elvis, but we've got the Pinello for Philo and Vaughn. I don't even know how to evaluate something like this. I think this is one of those decks you have to pilot a little bit, see how consistent it feels. One thing I did actually really like seeing is this Hope. There's actually a lot of good Alexanders in the game, as it turns out, and getting an EX burst that is searchable off of Vanille is really good, actually. It kind of looks like this list might be built more to enable the Zidane. We've got the 3 Noctis, 1 Prompto, 1 Gladio. It's like we've got a little bit of a control element. I feel like you have to be running like 2 Gladio, 2 Prompto normally, but that could be Earth Wind bias talking. I haven't actually played enough. I haven't played this list, obviously, but yeah, really, really interesting. I actually didn't even know this Hope was in the card pool. I'd be very curious to see. I'm going to go ahead and just bring this up, but I think Fire Wind 13 might actually be a deck. Hilariously enough, because of this card is category 13, and it's when Chocobo is put from the field into the break zone, you get a character that costs 2 or less. So if you go Fang Chocobo and your opponent Hecatons you, you just get back the Fang, which I think is really funny. Is it better than Wind Lightning? I don't know. Probably not. But, I mean, this Hope is just a good card, to be honest. So you kind of do maintain some density of good wind cards, or like just good 13 cards and good wind cards, which could just be good enough. Something I'll have to dabble with a little bit. But, yeah, like I said, this list is really interesting. I don't know enough about it to really... I haven't seen anything like this, period. So I can't give a great evaluation on it. But Lulu, Brynhilder is, of course, a classic, powerful combo as well. Up next, we have... Top After Swiss. This is Wind, Lightning, Storm. So we're really trying to enable this cloud. And you'll notice we're on only 13 lightning cards, so we just want to get that first backup down and then go from there. Yeah, so we're on the 3 Cloud, 2 Mana Black, 1 Yugiri, 2 Ixion, the 1 Ramu, 2 Kuja, a Yuk, and a Seymour. This list is really, really cool. I think the only thing that would scare me on this is if you expect to see a lot of wind, and to be fair, a lot of people are scared of wind right now just because 13 is such a bad matchup for it. But I think this list would struggle against other wind lists. We're on just the 2 Zidane, which is like the Mirror Breaker. Just 2 Rosa. Yuffie's like really, really good, but she's not as important in the mirror. Cloud doesn't have that many targets in mono win because a lot of their forwards outside of Yuffie are pretty low costed, so a lot of your payoffs just kind of don't work as well in that list. But I mean, Cloud, if you like pop 2 cards with this, you just won the game. Break something like an Une and a Madame Edel or something similar. Evre Tomos is just insanely good. You have access to Alexander, so this should do very well into Ice Earth. Alexander plus Lulu, just kind of toolboxing Lulu into being so many different things. 2 Chocobo. This Chocobo, I think, is really turning into the EX burst of choice for Wind right now. Trying to use it to develop faster when you're feeling pressured. it's a little bit interesting because this Alexander's better when you start actually being developed, but while you're developing, this card is so good. It just makes it kind of the better EX burst. I helped a lot with this list, actually, so I like a lot of it. I don't really like the Seymour Buddy as much. I would be looking elsewhere, maybe going just to a third or second copy of this Uke, which was like the only good breakable lightning backup in the game, which is really annoying. I don't know why that is, just lightning backups just have not kept up with the others as far as breakable ones in low density backup count decks anyway. Aphmau is really good, but doesn't really have the right number of targets in this list. I think Ricard is really good, but when you only have 12, it's going to miss quite a bit. Let's take a look here. Yu-Gi-Oh! Party. If you have 50, 49, you're going to reveal 5. And it was 13, so it'd be 12 remaining in deck. Yeah, 77% chance to whiff is just not good. You can't do that. So the density of the lightning card isn't good enough for a card, but I mean, other than that, it's a really, really solid list. Hopefully in the next set there's just like 1 or 2 good lightning backups. Like the standard units of this cycle are really good, but the lightning one is probably the weakest, I think. I think the modes are just a little too conditional in comparison to some of the others. Like the break effect is like doing damage to an already damaged forward, but like the only thing that does like small pockets of damage in Yuffie, and if Yuffie's hitting something, Yuffie's killing the whole field, right? Like we're pretty clear on that, I'm sure. Alright, so we go with this monstrosity. This is category 8 EX burst. Yeah, 35 EX is holy moly. Just feels excessive at that point. But this list is wild. There's nothing else like this. Every single one of these is an EX burst. We have our 4 colors. We can play a Warrior of Light, which we're on 2 of. This is the kind of deck that you just can't evaluate by looking at it. Again, like it's so out there and so against like normal deck building conventions, just given what it's trying to do. I mean, we're on just all of the colors. We got 2 Quistis in here that we're playing off of, I guess, our Tyros. We're not even on the Sids to help us play our category 8 cards. The Cypher Gilgamesh duo has been really good since it was printed. I think it's been criminally slept on. Gilgamesh plus Warrior of Light's really nasty as well. You can just kind of banish one. Don't like you're going to get it back anytime soon. I guess we are, because we have the 3 Kusith in here. The 2 Bygan to get us our Golbez, which I guess gets us our Seymour. It's interesting. I guess it gets us Kusith or Alexander as well. I feel like this list could be cleaned up a little bit. Like there's a lot of one-ofs in the summons. Some of these might be better to go to higher quantities. Like this Leviathan, for example. There's not a water forward to get back with it unless I'm missing something. Warrior of Light, but I feel like there's room to clean something like this up a little bit. But I definitely get what it's going for, and this list would be so obnoxious to play against it. If you've ever played against a deck with 30 EXs in it before, like, every point of damage is a struggle. You're just like, alright, please don't destroy me this time. Don't get me this time. You just kind of keep going, and like, RNA is a good card. Yes, Matt. Like, we're also not on, like, Axstar, which is interesting to me. I feel like that's a card that we could make room for. It's so strange. Like, I don't know. It's hard to go over something like this. From what I know, the pilot of this is Richie, right? Yeah, Richie is a really good at this list specifically. And it's one of those decks that like only one person in the world is really qualified to make statements on, because I don't think anyone else can play something like this to its full effectiveness. What a wild list. And going from a wild list to like one of the cleanest lists, like I will straight up tell you, I think the two cleanest lists of the weekend are the Ice Earth list from that won the Florida event, and this one. This list is just beautiful. Like, so many 3-ofs. Super consistent. We got the 15 backups. We got our 3 Rosa. We got our 2 Zidanes. We still made room for our 3 Finas. We've got room for 2 Bismarcks in here somehow. It's one of those things where you look at it, you go, how did you make room for all of this stuff? And you look at it and it's like, the list is so clean. We're on no Izana, no Ash, which I guess like sort of hurts us a little bit to make room for the Diabolos, but the Diabolos is trying to cover a matchup that's auto loss without it or the Yuffie. We've got just enough in the way of the Yuffie with the 2 mana, 1 Yuffie there, and then the full playset of Yuffies here. The switching, I usually go 1 mana, 3 Yuffie, 2 Yuffie. Going to 2 mana helps a little bit with expected backup ripping off of the Firewind Zidane. This list is just gorgeous. Like, there's so many good things in this list. 3 Nordstalin and the 3 Althea. We're looking to just hard draw our Althea so we can search Stiltskin, which gets us our Evray. It's just beautiful. Like, there's not another word for it. God help us if we get another good Chocobo backup. I do kind of wonder if this is the right Chocobo. Like, the only way you need to form a party is if you're stealing forwards. There's the other one gives like a boost. Yeah, it's 2,000 power to a forward in a party for a tap, as opposed to being able to party. And neither of them is good. It's like one of those like pick your fringe scenario. Do you need to survive a party attack, or do you need to be able to party attack with a stolen forward off of Zidane? Neither of them matters. You need something in case you draw Chocolate before you play your Fat Chocobo. But like this could be a 2 CP blank Chocobo backup, and if there wasn't another one in the game, you would just play whichever one you have. I also would be curious if like the second Atomos would be possible somehow. Like Atomos just makes these combos come through so much smoother. Like maybe the second Bismarck for 2 Atomos, but the Atomos is recurable off of Azura, so maybe like a Donid in here or something like that. Like, cut the Bismarck, put a Donid in, go down like 1 copy of Mina, so you have like Donid, and then that like gives you access to search. It's an expensive monster search you don't want to pay for, but like Atomos is just, it's so good. Atomos, Evray, Typhon, so many backups in this list are like game determinatively powerful, right? That I think you can get away with paying 4 to search for a monster. It's kind of unfortunate FFTA is not FFTA2. It'd be really nice if that could add back the Luso. But I don't think there's any FFTA cards that you'd want to do. So like this would be unbreakable, but it's an interesting one. It's a very interesting one. But this list is just beyond good. Like I love this list. This is maybe my favorite list of the entire weekend. Lastly, we have Water Golbez in all of its glory. The most amazing thing about this list to me is that I feel like so much of this list would crumble to the same hate that 13's going against. It's like another aggro deck, but like it's not doing anything super different for aggro. Almost surprised to not see like Windish Dola in here to like protect the board. Like the only protection is the 3 Amaterasu's, but it's an aggro deck. I mean, it's gonna flip. We've got the Zargaboth and Shulk. Shulk to play Zidane, by the way, is so nasty. Like, you have no idea how nasty this gets. We're never gonna whiff. We've got so many different. We've got a discard outlet. The twins themselves are extremely powerful, and our main elements are fire and water, so they're actually hard castable. Maki the Phantom kind of. This is actually kind of sneaky. Makes it where it's hard to block. Yeah, it's another one of those lists. Like, we've seen decks like this before, and usually things like Shantoto are enough to kind of slow it down, but I think everybody's played against a list like this at least once on Octagon and just gotten just completely run over by it. So, yeah. The Zargabath and Shelk is really cute, though, admittedly. And yeah, that's the full list from Gold Coast. Some really interesting deck lists. Some big takeaways. If you don't prepare for 13, you're going to get run over by it, I think. Apparently there were only 3 pilots in Gold Coast and in Florida. Gold Coast is confirmed. Florida, I heard kind of through the grapevine that there just weren't many people actually playing it. I do know that it got 17th. Soiree seems to be the most consistent, like, across regions. There was no Ice Earth anywhere other than the U.S., but having played that list, Ice Earth looks really good. Let's go ahead and pull up the other 2 tourneys real quick. Yeah, there's a lot of Soiree topping everywhere. A little bit of mono water still showing up. Not a lot of wind, especially in the U.S., which makes sense. The U.S. has never been a very wind-heavy region. Or North America. I guess it's not technically just the U.S. Ice Lightning is actually doing really well for itself. I think the only place... No, there was an Ice Lightning list, because the Terra list was Ice Lightning. Ice Lightning's looking really good. Soiree is looking good. Ice Earth is extremely potent right now. A lot of variety in the format, that's for sure. Megissa's actually having a pretty solid showing as well. There were 2 Megissas that topped here. 6 is showing up out of nowhere. Probably in the near future, I'm going to have a review where I go over all the cards from Nightmares and just talk about it. And it's going to be funny because I'm going to get to the Stooges and I'm going to laugh because people didn't realize that what the Stooges almost do is they just printed this set 12 new forwards for Fire Ice 6 and just said, okay, here, have fun. You can be trusted with this. And I am not sure the player base could have been. So thanks for watching. Leave a comment, leave a like, say hi in the comments if you haven't already, and I'll see y'all in the next one.